everybody, Taylor with KC here, and today in this video, we're gonna be walking you step by step through how to assemble your Platform 1 roof rack. So with that being said, this video is going to apply to all of the different vehicle fitments that we make a roof rack for, all the way from the Fords, Lexuses, Toyotas, all that good stuff. So again, this is just the assembly portion of how to put together the platform and the side rails and marry that together. This video is not going to show you how to install it onto your vehicle itself. That is a separate set of videos. We have one for each and every vehicle out there. Click the links in the description below to see those. So that being said, let's get right into it. All right, so the first order of business is to walk through what each component of the Platform 1 roof rack is, so that way you know exactly what we're talking about when we refer to it throughout the rest of this video. So it's gonna be a little bit long here, but we're gonna get through it pretty quickly here. And more importantly, we're also gonna show off what the differences are. So we're gonna just start on my back and then work towards you. Number one, this is the side rail. So this is the part of the vehicle, or this is the part of the roof rack that gets mounted onto the vehicle itself. So side rail. We have our upper mounting deck. This is the extrusion with a bunch of slots in it that is very wide. So the widest one is your upper mounting deck. Then moving on to these two pieces here. These two profile-wise, they're going to be the same. They kind of like form like a little L or a little right angle here. One is going to be a shorter piece. One is going to be a longer piece. These are your side or your perimeter extrusion. So the long ones are gonna run lengthwise on the driver and the passenger side of the vehicle. Short ones are for the front and the back of the vehicle. Then while we're at it right there, I just wanna show off the little corner caps. So there's 4 of the corner caps, 1 go in each corner. That's what connects all the perimeter pieces together. One thing I didn't mention is we just have one of everything on the table here, just for simplicity. All the rest of the stuff is over there on the other table. So we got through the side rail, we got through the upper mounting deck, we got through both of the side and the front and back perimeter extrusions. Next up, we have the lower or the horizontal support rail. So this gets mounted to the perimeter going across the vehicle rather than going lengthwise. And this is what the upper mounting deck is going to sit on. So this is a little kind of T-shaped looking thing with a little slot down the center. We have the end cap. End cap is for the big upper mounting deck over here. We have a handful of little L brackets. These L brackets are what mount the entire rack onto the vehicle itself. Okay. Over to this side, we just have a couple of little remaining components here. We have the side blackout plates, so this is to fill the gap inside of the side rail. If you are not installing the optional side lights, then you have your little KC emblem that goes right here in the corner. We have a channel cover that blocks off some of those side channels. You can hide wires behind it. It also kind of helps reduce any wind or road noise, so channel cover there. Last but not least, we have a bunch of hardware, so let's kind of reposition and move all into that. All right, let's get right into the hardware. This is a little bit of a mouthful, so just bear with me. One quick note before we get into it is this is all hardware that might not exactly look like what you actually get in the fully finished kit. We're filming this a little bit early, so just a note there. While we're on that note, this is all for a 5th gen 4Runner, so some of the quantities might be different if you're installing on a Tacoma. If you're on a Raptor, you're gonna have a little bit different hardware. You're gonna have a Q-size drill bit, you're gonna have riv nuts, things like that. So, all right, disclaimers out of the way. What is the hardware? Let's take a look. This is all M6 hardware. The long guys are to connect the fully finished platform to the side rails themselves. Next up, moving down to the little shorter M6 hardware, there's 2 little subsets here. The smaller subset is to connect the corner caps to the side perimeter extrusions. Then we are moving on to the lower horizontal support rails here. That's to mount these to the perimeter extrusion as well. Also talking about that lower horizontal support rail, these little brackets and all the hardware that goes with it is to connect those support rails to that big wide upper mounting deck. Again, upper mounting deck, these guys are to connect or install those ABS plastic end caps into the ends of those upper mounting decks. Okay, that's the bulk of it. Moving on to this stuff. Let's cover the big stuff first. So this guy, this guy, this guy, and this one right here, the big spacers. These are all to connect the fully finished roof rack, the side rail and the platform, the whole thing done to the roof of your vehicle. Moving on, we have some carriage bolts and some other little hardware here. This is now to connect a couple different sets of things. So you're gonna use these to connect the side rails to the little L brackets that mount to the vehicle itself. You're also gonna use these to install the flush mount side lights if you're using that option, or the blackout plates that come standard with the Platform 1 roof rack. Last but not least, a little bit of hardware for the emblems. So that's it, got through it. Okay, finally moving on to step number 1 of the actual assembly of the Platform 1 roof rack. Lay out some moving blankets, either on the ground or a couple of folding tables side by side. Obviously we have this nice carpeted workbench here, so we're gonna be using this, but lay out a nice, clean, clear work area. Okay, with that out of the way, the first step is to grab all of that hardware that we talked about in the little teeny L brackets, 2 holes on one side, 1 hole on the bottom, and start putting all that little hardware together. All you have to do is grab your little bracket. You're gonna drop a bolt into each hole, and then at this point, you're just doing it by hand, so just very loosely until you start to feel that nylock nut start to catch, and that's it. So you're gonna do 2 on like that, 1 in that way. Got like, I don't know, a dozen more, if not more of these to go. So Jacob's gonna put the camera down, Jaden's gonna help out, Jacob's gonna help out. Let's get to it. Once you have all of the hardware finished that connects the lower horizontal support rail to that big wide upper mounting deck, we're going to start to slot those into those slotted channels. Has to go in a very specific way. So it's gonna go in just like this, right? So I'm gonna show you exactly how to do that. We'll get one done and then we'll just do the rest of them off camera. So all you have to do is really just grab that M6 nut and kind of slide it in. And again, just making sure you're paying attention to the orientation that you're doing. That right there. So now at this point, this rail is pretty much done. However, in order to get these out of the way, unless you have a giant production area behind you, a really good idea is just to go ahead and slide these down the channel and only on the outer 2 on the ends. Just get it started nice and tight so that way it's not gonna actually slide out. So that way, what you can do, once you have all those done, pretty simple. You can go like this, and now they don't all fall out, and you've saved yourself that pre-assembly step. So repeat the process until you're done with those. All right, the final pre-assembly step for the lower horizontal support rails is to fill the 4 holes on the ends of this thing. So the easiest way to do this is actually to flip it with the big wide side facing down, skinnier side facing up. On each one of these holes, drop 1 of those bolts right through it, and 1 of the nylock nuts. Again, just hand tight, nothing crazy. You don't have to go super tight on these. This is just all pre-assembly. Yeah, just go ahead and repeat the process here on each one of these. All right, so now your horizontal support rails should look like this. So you've got 4 brackets in each, and you've got the bolts and the hardware installed on the ends. At this point, the pre-assembly on these suckers are done. So go ahead and just put these nicely and safely out of the way. As you're doing that, just make sure none of the hardware falls out or anything like that. You don't want to be losing stuff all over the garage floor. So, okay, so now it is time to move on to the assembly of the actual platform portion of the roof rack. So this is when we're going to start working with the side perimeter extrusions. These are the ones that form a right angle, a little L shape. There's obviously the 2 long ones, so the ones that run lengthwise on the vehicle, driver and the passenger side. And there's the 2 short ones that look like so. Again, that's that little side cutout, what it looks like. They're all the same. The sides are the same, and then the front and the back is the same. So the big thing at this point is to make sure that you're laying everything down upside down. So what that means is the wide portion of it with the single slot in it, just go ahead and drop that down just like that, with the L's kind of facing in, just like that. Then, while you're at it, you got 3 of these. We're forming a horseshoe. You're gonna need to grab 2 of the corner cap. Okay, future me here. At this point in the process, this is when you're going to want to install all the wiring and do the wiring for your side lights if you're choosing to do that. So that being said, we're getting ready to film that video right now. So if you need to wire up your side lights, go ahead and click the link in the description below, and we're gonna get to this video right now. What you wanna do to get started is go ahead and locate the little nubbin, you want to call it a little nub, I don't know, on the corner piece here. And we're going to insert that nub into the square slot on the extrusion, so it goes right into here. So what we're going to do is just kind of make sure all of these everywhere in here is lined up properly. We don't want anything misaligned, so we're just going to do that and just kind of get it started by hand. We don't want to wobble it in too much because too much side pressure on this is going to snap that off. So at that point, we're gonna get it like here, and then just slide it to the edge, give it some support, and tap it in. Okay, at this point, we're good on this one. We're gonna go ahead and move on to the shorter portion of that rail. do the exact same thing again. So we're gonna slide that in. That one goes in a lot easier, just a little bit of a friction fit. So just to make sure, okay, all good there. So now at this point, we don't just rely on that friction fit to actually hold everything together. It does use some fasteners here. So what we have to do on the short section, we're gonna slide in 2 of the nylock nuts, grab 2 of those and slide those in from the opposite end that we just worked on, because now our extrusion will be blocked off as soon as we put a cap onto here. So we have to make sure that we get this hardware in now, otherwise it's gonna be too late when we get that other cap in. And put that right where it needs to go. Then you can grab your bolt, do the exact same thing. Just go ahead and get it started. Okay, future me here, there's one other step that you need to do right now at this part of the process when you're doing the corners that we didn't show off originally, and that's to drop in 2 extra bolts, and the hardware obviously on this side of the extrusion, that's for these holes right here on the corner piece. We're showing these top ones, but we also have to do these as well, which we forgot. So in order to do that, you just grab your hardware and put it in this side, kind of, I don't know what to call it, but the ones facing inwards. So one on the long piece and one on the corresponding short piece. And then as you put everything together, you're just gonna put your hardware right into position there through this hole right here, like that. Then on the long side, we only need to do 1 at this point. So we need to get 1 in, slide it all the way down to here. Basically because we're gonna do those steps, that the horizontal support rails that we did earlier. After we get this U formed, we're gonna slide those in from the open end all the way towards this closed end. So yeah, we just gotta get this one fastener in. Jaden, why don't you handle that? And then we're good. Okay, now we are on the opposite corner, the one that we just completed. So again, working on that shorter section of the perimeter, just gonna slide that in. Again, making sure all this is lined up neatly. I got it fairly close, and then just, and instead of going in the long way like Jaden did, I'm just going to go off the book a little bit here. And rather than having to slide that all the way, I'm gonna put it right there. Okay. And then get that nice and lined up. Then gotta kind of wiggle it to the front a little bit. And now, at this point, what we can go ahead and do is clear out our workspace once again and grab those other pieces that we were just working on and start to maneuver in. So let's get set up for that and we'll show you what to do there. All right, lower horizontal support rails. That's these guys that we already worked on at one of those earlier steps and install the brackets into. So what we have right here is on the ends, we have our nuts. So we need to flip this over and slide these nuts into this little extrusion here on the perimeter side rail. Then at this point, you just kind of have to use your thumbs and guide it along the track here and just get it all the way in at one time and go evenly. Don't push one side and not the other. So that's pretty much it. So we got about 4 or 5 more of these to go. So again, just make sure you're going the right way here and make sure you get those nuts in that extrusion and yeah, get to it. Okay, once you have all of those support rails slid into place, the big thing that you're gonna wanna do is figure out your spacing. The easiest way to go about this is actually to just do them all evenly spaced. The only time you wouldn't want to do this if you have other things sticking up off of the roof of your vehicle, like obstructions to avoid. So you'll just want to check for that. But in most cases, just evenly space them is the best way to do it. So the way that you just do the simple math in order to figure this out is count the number of gaps that you have in the whole rack. So on this rack in particular, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then obviously 6 once we add that final perimeter on it. So we have 6 gaps. So what you'll want to do is run your tape measure right along the inside or wherever you want to measure it from, you know. So on this one, we have a total of 84 inches long, 7 feet on the dot. You just do 84 divided by 6, and that's how, that's the gap that you need in between. So you go right from where you measured. In this case, it's gonna be 14, on the dot, 14. And then center to center, on the dot, 14. Center to center, 14. Once you've done that, Easy, good to go. Now just go ahead and grab your tool and start tightening everything. All right, so support rails are all in and tightened and ready to go. At this point now, we need to actually start working on the top of the rack. Reminder, this is the bottom. So what we need to do is grab this. This is when having some friends to keep you company and also sucker into getting help comes in handy. So we just need to flip this over. So we're gonna go just like that. That step that we did earlier on in the process of tightening the outermost ones down, we can go ahead and undo that at this point because we need to go get these mobile so that way we can actually slide our rails into position here. So loosen them just enough that they freely slide around. Okay, so now moving onto that upper mounting deck into these brackets that we did. Have a friend supporting it or a table or something. Ultimately, all we have to do is slide in these brackets, the nuts into the extrusions themselves. So just like kind of how we've done on a bunch of other steps in this process so far, just make sure that that nut goes into that spot right there. This is a little tricky because you have 4 that you have to deal with at one time. They're pretty close together, but as soon as you get them, okay, then it slides a little bit easier. All right, so we've got our little ABS plastic end cap on this one. What we're gonna be working on is the side that has the 4 nubbins sticking out. And then we've got our 4 bolts to go with it. So a couple things that you're gonna need at this point, rubber mallet again, and then at this point, either just a ratchet is going to be a really good handy item or a right angle drill or something along those lines. So what we're trying to do now is slide this in into position and kind of get it as close as we can. And sometimes some little tricks here, you have to kind of bend it out once you have one corner in and just kind of get that extra material kind of flexed out of the way a little bit. So just akin to that. Obviously we can't, I need a little bit more room that way. We can't go too far this way because then your hardware is gonna, come out. So we can't do that. But anyway, so just hold it in position. And tap it in as much as possible. Now at this point, what we're gonna do is insert this hardware into these holes on the ends and go ahead and fasten it down, and it's gonna expand that sleeve inside to keep that thing nice and taut and into position where we want it to be. So I'm gonna work on this side first, out in this corner, just kind of start it, and then that's it. And then I'm gonna grab my ratchet and just start cranking her down. It's a pretty long bolt, so be ready. Okay, so from here, what you can go ahead and do is grab this and realistically, before you fully insert into that perimeter, what you're gonna wanna do is just kind of get it oriented left to right on the vehicle, driver to passenger side, where you want it. This is now user's choice, right? This is gonna depend on the gear that you're trying to mount, whether it's just some storage boxes or solar panels, things like that. If you want it more biased to the driver or the passenger side of the vehicle, that's when you'll do that. You can also just use the same technique from before if you just want them dead centered in the vehicle, evenly spaced, whatever it is. So for now, we're gonna get ours just kind of roughly on that even spaced. Then we're gonna go ahead and pull it into that position so you can see how it kind of locks into that perimeter rail right there. And we're just gonna get it as fully in as it goes. And then from here, now we're ready to start tightening all of our fasteners all the way down this track, and then move on to the other upper mounting deck at this point. All right, one thing I forgot to mention is the order of operations here on which ones to tighten. Tighten the 2 of them, the 2 first, and then move on to that bottom. All right, once you finish that side, go ahead and move on to this side. Okay, on the back of the rack now, next step is to just simply install those plastic ABS end caps on the upper mounting decks, just like we did in the front. Okay, flip it back over. Okay, so last few things to insert here. We need to do one more nut in that same exact channel that we've already been doing before. This is the one that's going to sink in that corner piece into here, right here. So once we do that, then we have 10 of those long bolts that we're just gonna enter in the top. Again, these are what is going to fasten the platform assembly that we just did to the side rail to create that full hybrid design rack. And do the same thing on that side too. onto the final perimeter piece of the extrusions here. One thing to note here, this is technically the rear of the vehicle, the rear of the roof rack. So at this point, one of the accessories that you need to know about if you're planning on installing a chase light bar is the chase light bar mount. You have to install this before you get the final 2 corner caps on at this point, simply because you won't have access to that M6 slot otherwise. So especially if you're mounting it, to the underneath side of things. If you're mounting it to the side, doesn't matter, you can do that whenever you want. But if you wanted it low profile tucked underneath the roof rack, that's when you're gonna wanna insert your hardware for this at this step. We're not doing that on this rack, so more for demonstration purposes. So at this point, what we're gonna go ahead and do is get our corner cap, and just like we did on those other sides, we're just gonna work with the shorty guy with the shorter perimeter extrusion here and get this into position. So we're gonna kind of get it lined up again. I need to go find my rubber mallet, and then we're just gonna tap it into position. Once we get that tapped in, we're gonna grab our 2 nuts. Again, we're gonna slide 1 nut into here for this side, and then 1 for the other side. So, got 1 there, and we got 1 there. The other thing that we didn't do yet, apparently on this side, is we didn't insert our nut onto this, the long-wise extrusion, so we're gonna go ahead and do that while we're at it. Okay, so now, all of those are pretty good. We're gonna just tap this into place. Okay. Pull our nut into the position that we want it to be in. Once you have your nut into position, go ahead and fasten that bolt all the way down, as long as this is completely nice and tight and well fitted together. We're gonna move on and do the exact same thing on this side. So again, just double check and make sure that your nut is inside of the little slot there. And fasten it down nice and tight here. All right, one pro tip at the end here, as you're fitting this final perimeter piece into the rest of the assembly that we have already done, you're kind of trying to get these 2 corner caps into those extrusions. So depending on how it is, a matter of a millimeter makes a little bit of a difference here. So sometimes what you have to do is either pull the rack apart from here and that side, or compress it together in order to get these slots to line up perfectly. So this is when it comes in handy to, again, have at least another friend, ideally 2 more friends on hand to be able to do that. So one person can be pushing, one person can be pulling, whatever it may look like, in order to get these lined up. Once you've done that, we can go ahead and slide that whole system right here. And again, make sure all of our hardware is in the position we want it to be. It is, and then just knock it into position. Okay, once we've done that, grab your hardware and sink that hardware in right here. And with that being said, that's the full assembly of the platform portion of the roof rack. And then we just gotta get it connected to the side rail portion, the vehicle specific side rail. So I gotta grab my hardware, get to it. All right, on to the fun part now. So we have the side rails and we're getting ready to attach them to the actual assembly of the platform that we just did. So what you're gonna wanna do is go ahead and grab this, and you wanna just, I know it seems obvious, but you wanna make sure that you're putting the right side on the right side. The way to tell is by looking at this down the line and making sure that bend, that L bend kind of folds all the way in, faces in, and then the kick out for the front facing light bar kicks outside of the vehicle. Okay, now, before I move too much further onto this, it's worth noting here at this point that if you're installing this on a Land Cruiser 250, your side rail is not gonna be 1 piece. It's actually gonna be 2 pieces that are joined together with a little connector plate with 2 carriage bolts. So other than that, it's the exact same process. All we really wanna do is install the front to the front, get your holes lined up, your bolts lined up. We kind of already did this to make our jobs a little bit easier. So we're close here. So just go ahead and start to drop in your side rail into those bolts that we had already placed earlier, making sure that you leave clearance for how that interface on this side actually clearances everything. Okay, so once you've got everything lined up, now is actually when you get to start tightening it all down. So you just wanna make sure that on this outside, this sits very flush to the underneath of that perimeter rail. And then the outside is front to back flush against that rail as well. So once you have it positioned nicely, go ahead and drop a washer on, then drop your nylock nut on to each one of these and go ahead and start tightening it down. I believe this is a 10 mil You need a deep socket, it's a pretty long bolt, so get to it and then just finish the process on the rest of this side rail. Okay, and then just go ahead and move on to the other side and get that done. I will say it's easier to work from the front to the back than what we're doing right now, which is the back to the front. So just, you know, pro tip. All right, on to the last couple steps of the install process here. This rack, we're not doing the side lights, so we're actually doing the blackout plate. So this is when you start to use those carriage bolts. So drop the carriage bolts in on the plate and then just go ahead and push it through those holes right there. And you just kind of hold it into position, and some of these line up a little bit, you know, in line with these other hardware, but there's enough room to make it all work nicely. So just go ahead and get it started on both sides. And then once you do that, you can go through with your open-ended wrench and get it all tightened up nice and neatly. So go ahead and repeat that same process for all 4 openings on the roof rack if you are not installing your side lights. And then from there, we just have one more step installing the emblem, but we'll get to that when we get to that, and yeah, let's get to it. All right, the last steps of the entire assembly here is to actually put on the little KC emblem in the corner here. So again, the big thing here is just to pay attention to if your rack is upside down or right side up when you're doing this. So pretty simple, just bolt her on there. So we're gonna go ahead and get to doing that. And as I do this, I think we're gonna wrap this video up. So if you have any questions about this install process at all, please leave us a comment in the comment section below. We're happy to help you out with this. And if you want sooner help, please give us a phone call. Our customer service team would love to help you out as well. So that being said, hopefully you found this install guide useful. Again, this is the assembly portion of the Platform 1 roof rack. So if you're looking for how to actually install it onto your vehicle, we have a whole series of those. Again, check those out in the link in the description below. That being said, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for bearing with us in this long video. Again, Taylor Casey, venture further. We'll see you later.